Welcome to Monday Motivator. Thanks for coming. My name is Tobey. Hope you had a great weekend. Just like to start off by saying I hope you all had a great weekend. I did some interesting things this weekend, enjoyed myself greatly, and I'm looking forward to a new work week and am quite enthusiastic about what's to come this week. Today on Monday Motivator, we're going to be talking about the true path and outcome of desire. And we have talked about desire before, the law of intention and desire. And I just wanted to run through briefly what I believe is the true outcome of desire. Many people think that desire is the path to destruction. And frankly, I think that is incorrect. And while there is never any right or wrong, there are only results. I believe that authentic desire can lead to many places of wonder, and we're going to be talking about this morning. And I'd just like to share with you right from the get-go a little story. Many of you have heard about King Arthur and the Sword and the Stone, and on the Christmas day, which was a very joyous day when King Arthur pulled the sword from the stone, he turned to his closest advisor, which was Merlin, the wizard. And he asked Merlin for guidance to know what the outcome of being crowned king would be and what that meant to his life. And Merlin didn't have an answer for him. He basically shrugged and walked away. But when King Arthur went back to his room, he found on the bed a straw doll that he had when he was 7 or 8 years old, and it was old and worn. And also on the bed was a broken slingshot that he had when he was in his early teen years, and also a broken mirror that he found in the forest when he was 20. And he realized that while Merlin had not answered his question immediately, the question laid right in front of him. When he was 8, all he wanted to do and his biggest desire was to play with this doll. And then when he became 12 and 13, all he wanted to do was hunt for rabbits and squirrels with his slingshot. And then when he turned 17, 18, all he wanted to do was look in the mirror and see if he was desirable to women. And he realized in the message, "You're not in the shot, just shows the stage." Oh, thank you. Sorry. And I'll continue the story from here, but thank you to Nancy for showing me that I'm actually not in the picture, but hopefully everyone could hear me. He realized on the bed lay the answer to his question about, well, what would be the outcome to being crowned king. And he realized that as new desires take over, and as you grow and learn from previous desires and fulfilled desires, that one day his crown will be as trivial as a doll, as useless as a broken slingshot, and as vain as a mirror. That's not to say that our desires are useless and trivial. It's to say that as we move through life and new desires replace previous ones, the ultimate path to where we're headed is essentially enlightenment. And we learned from each desire and the fulfillment of desires the true path to enlightenment. Desires are not something that are just laid out for us. We are, as humans, responsible to pick the desires which fulfill us the most along our path, yet all the while knowing that eventually those desires will become trivial and will be replaced with new ones. And this is part of the growth and the learning process. So if I were to relate that to my own life, when I was a kid, my first recollections of desire were dinky toys. It's really when we lived in Thomasville, Nova Scotia. The one thing that I would look forward to is our monthly trip to Shelburne, where we could go to the store and buy a dinky toy for 25 cents. Oh, and the shot went away again. I don't know why it keeps doing that. Something wrong with my video capture device, so I'll have to keep an eye on it, I guess. And then when I was a teenager, all I wanted to do was learn to drive, and this was my first car, a Gremlin with a powerful engine that could zip around town and pick up women. And then when I became a little bit older, my desire to become a professional jazz musician became the most important thing to me, the thing that I was most enthusiastic about. So what I want you to do just very quickly is just picture in your mind what is your current strongest desire. And this must be something that is currently unfulfilled. But if you think about it, what is the biggest desire that you have that is currently going unfulfilled? What is it that you want most passionately? And Amir asks, what kind of car was that? It was a 1974 AMC Gremlin. And American Motors Corporation is no longer around, and they had really ugly cars like the Gremlin and the AMC Pacer and the Javelin, if you can remember the Javelin. But anyway, thank you for the question. So please go ahead and picture in your mind the current desire, the one that you hold most passionate, and the one that goes unfulfilled. And now I want you to compare that to a previously fulfilled desire. And what you'll notice is that the old one, while it may not seem trivial, it is from a path to enlightenment perspective kind of old and worn, and it has been replaced by a new growth period, a period of learning, a period of discovery. And all of this is driving you forward and is the natural progression of life. But if your desires go unfulfilled, very often what it is because of your judgment over them. And we interrupt the fulfillment of desires because we have these feelings of unworthiness, such as, I'm not worthy to fulfill this desire, or I don't deserve it. I am undeserving of this particular thing that I want to have in my life. And then there's also lack of enthusiasm for desires. So while you may have a desire, you're just basically unenthusiastic about creating it. So just in summary, all desires lead eventually to enlightenment. Eckhart Tolle says, even the sun must die. Basically, all desires fade and are replaced with new ones. And eventually you realize that the creation of desires and the fulfillment of desires should not be done through fear and worry and strife and fighting and the judgment that you hold over these things, unworthiness or undeserving or unenthusiastic. What you realize is it's fun to do. It's fun to fulfill desires. It's enlightening to move from one to the next. And eventually, as you grow older, the fulfillment of desires are equally as strong, but yet you're not fighting as much to create them. It's just part of the natural progression of life. And that was my thought for this morning's Monday Motivator. Are there any questions or comments about the true outcome and path of desires? And of course, any other topics that you would like to discuss. So Andrew has a question about Groundhogg. Sure, go right ahead. So Kim makes the comment, I am reading one thing and it helps you focus on your desires for one thing. Good. Yes. I'm one thing. Is that a book? I am reading one thing and it helps you focus on your desires or one thing. So if you could maybe clarify a little bit about your statement, that would be great. Amir, thank you. Yes. So Kim was referencing a book and she's just looking for the name of the author. Amir asks, so are you saying that desires are transient and not very important? Actually, no, that's not what I'm saying. And I apologize. Unfortunately, I only have words to express how I feel, and I may not always get them correct. But perhaps if you were to go back to the story of King Arthur, what I'm saying is that while desires move from one to the next, it offers us the opportunity to grow and learn through the fulfillment of desires. So desires are not only not trivial, but they are all important. It's just if you look back to previous desires, they may seem less powerful and trivial, and they may seem almost worthless in comparison to your current desires. But that in and of itself is the natural progression of life and the learning process and the path to enlightenment. It's not to underestimate the value of desires. It is to see them in a different light. The growth period that one goes through as you create and fulfill new desires leads you to believe or learn and make part of your belief system that we should not be holding any judgment or any feelings of unworthiness or undeservedness towards desires. It is just the learning process and the growth process that leads us eventually to realize that the entire path of desire is leading us to the ultimate goal of becoming enlightened. So therefore, not transient, certainly important. And I hope that answers your question. So Kim says the author is The One Thing by Gary Keller. Good. And it is important to focus on one desire at a time. I know that many people have dream boards, and I've never done that. I've never been a big believer in dream boards because I believe that it fractures your focus. And if you focus on too many things, then nothing gets created. It's like if you're after, in marketing, we say if you're after everyone, then you're after no one. It's like focus on your target and you'll hit the target pretty much every time, because the concept of self-discipline and focus and on one thing creates, it expands into your life until it becomes fulfilled. And then you'll just pick a new destination and a new desire. Greg says, I have lots of things I wish to accomplish, and in the past got caught up in this or that mentality. Now I realize I can have this and that. Doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. However, this leads to a challenge in focus and prioritization. Yes. And you've actually talked about that before, the concept of focus and prioritization. I also believe that it's not an either or world. You can have both. I often make reference to, affluent people buy cake and they eat it. Well, poor people buy donuts, focus on the whole, and wonder what the hell is wrong with their life. This is really the basis of what I'm talking about today, is that fulfilling desires in one's life should not be stressful or arduous or in any way combative or fighting your way to the top. It should be a natural process of learning and discovery and, wow, that was really cool. Greg says also, now I try to schedule all of the things as part of my day, but shiny objects often catch my eye. And that's the concept of competing intentions. And we've talked about competing intentions in some of our That's Ambitious courses. Great comments this morning. I love the feedback. Andrew asked a groundhog question, and we can turn to that immediately if we want to. So Andrew says, when I inserted a groundhog form with Elementor, it showed a list of forms, but I don't know where they came from. Okay, let's deal with that. So in Groundhogg, you actually have the ability to name all of your forms that are in Groundhogg. So if you go down to the funnel builder and you pick a funnel that has a form, for example, 30 Fulfillment requests the hot seat, which, by the way, we have another mastermind coming up in next week. And we have a couple of people that have requested the mastermind, but it would be nice to see you in the hot seat if you're interested. It's always nice to have people request it, and we will schedule it accordingly. And we'd love to help people working on projects. Actually, so this one doesn't have a form, so let me go back. Okay, so here's a web form right here. And the name of that web form is up here. So often what happens is when you add a form, and let's just go and do that, it's called web form. So therefore, if you look in the Elementor integration, you'll find the list, and it's not easy to find things if they're all labeled web form. So now what you have to do is you have to rename all of those so that they show up properly. So then let's go to the actual Elementor page plugin or integration and see what that looks like. So what I'm going to do is just edit it with Elementor, and this is just a new page. And it's sure taking its time to load this morning, so I apologize for any delay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a container, and inside that container I'm going to use the Elementor form. So there's an Elementor form that I'm putting in, name, email, and message. And then what we're going to do is the actions after submit are not going to be email, they're going to be Groundhogg. Like that. And then under Groundhogg you can map the fields. So the first name is that, the email is that, the message goes to custom meta, and then the step settings are you can no, you don't really need step settings. So, but apply a tag and that can start the form. That's one way to do it. The other way is to literally pick the Groundhogg form right out of the here. So you can see that the Turning Point webinar replay is listed, and that's where that name comes from. So I showed you two different ways to use Elementor and web forms. I hope that makes sense. So Andrew says, thank you. I think I understand. Amir asks, any thoughts about doing a Groundhog in-person socially distanced boot camp? I think in the case of Groundhog, there is a lot of, for example, if you really want to learn Groundhog, I think the answer is in a couple of things. The first one is the Groundhog Academy itself has a few courses that are really worth doing. And if you go over to the help section and courses, you get to something called academy.groundhog.io. And then you can enroll in a course now. And the course that I think is the best one is the official Quick Start course for beginners. You're never going to get a more hands-on approach to something. It's really well done by Adrian. It's about an hour long. And then after that, you can move on to the Ultimate Review Generator funnel, which is pretty cool. That's a new one that's been added. And then I also like Course Creator Essentials, which is great. And then also as part of the That's Ambitious programs, there is Groundhog courses in there as well. There's Groundhog course 1 and 2. So there's Groundhog 1, which is a little less hands-on, and then Groundhog 2 is a completely hands-on course that I did myself, which exists somewhere right there, Groundhog 2. And then after that, if you get through those and you still have questions about Groundhog, I'm always open to receiving questions in the Facebook group, and that's what it's there for. It's there for many things like Monday Motivator, but it's also there for questions that you just want to ask. Hey, Paul, what about this thing in Groundhog? Just like Andrew did this morning, which was a great thing to do. And then also you can check in with Groundhog themselves about any questions that you have. But in terms of doing a hands-on socially distanced course at the moment, I don't think that's... I think many people are still gun shy about something like that, and I don't think it's the best way to learn Groundhog. So I hope that's useful to you. And Amir says, hey, thanks for the recap. You're very welcome. And Andrew says, hey, thanks. I was doing it completely wrong. I was doing it in the second way. Okay. So there's two ways to do it. The first way that I showed you, by the way, uses the Elementor form builder, which is quite unique. It's very different than Groundhog. So for example, if I go to, I know that I did this recently with this website, OttawaTravelAgents.ca, one of my clients. Groundhog can't do this thing. If you look here at this form here where it says book a trip, and drop down dates and things like that, Groundhog can't make it look like this side by side, which is really cool as part of the design. But what you can do is map the fields to Groundhog by adding a tag. And that was the first way that I showed you. The second way uses just the Groundhog form builder, and it just embeds the form inside of the Elementor page. So, yeah. So neither way is wrong, Andrew. It was just, I think you got a little confused about which one to use in that particular situation. So, are there any other questions? Okay, well, it looks like we're good for today. It was a good half hour of Monday Motivator, which is pretty average. Just once again, thank you for showing up. I hope that the quick lesson on desire was valuable to you. Some people already made some comments about it, and I appreciate the opportunity to share those thoughts with you this morning. I think it's important as we head into this week that desires are extremely important, yet we undermine the effectiveness of them by putting judgment over them. So that was really the point of today. Richard says, thanks for the Groundhog learning info. I needed that too. You're very welcome. Thanks. Nice to see you too as well, Greg and Kim and everybody else that was on the call. Thank you for your participation and feedback. And I wish you a great week, and get out there and be ambitious. My name is Paul Tobey. Have a great day. Hey, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, go subscribe to the channel, and get out there and be ambitious.